Welcome back to the Thought Balloons podcast. I am your host, Jeff Folsham. With me today is my good friend, artist, RPG enthusiast, and writer, Ethan S Brewerton. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Full disclosure, everybody, this is our second time recording. If you've listened to the episode with Turkey Terror, I was having mic issues again, so we called a mulligan, and hopefully my mic stuff won't be acting up this time around. But do bear with us in case there's references to things that we said maybe in the last recording. So yeah, since we're starting over, what better place to start than the beginning? I know we started out last time talking about our histories and how we got into art. Kind of like let's go over that again, because I thought it was pretty interesting. You mentioned how you got into drawing because you liked building things. You maybe like expand on that a little bit.
Well, they didn't hear that part, right?
Well, yeah, but like, kind of recap it and like maybe go into a little bit more depth with it.
Sure. So, I didn't start out drawing. I dabbled in drawing when I was a kid, just like everybody else. I used to like to draw dinosaurs and stuff like that. But my main thing was like building stuff with Legos or Connects or wood or sticks, whatever, rocks, whatever was around. And I mostly got into drawing to like get ideas out, because like when I was a kid, one of the things that I wanted to be was an inventor. So like I wanted to think up stuff and then like draw it out so I could show other people and like get ideas on like if it would actually work, how I could make it work better, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think that's everything.
That's about what we talked. So now to diverge into the multiverse of which different ways this conversation could have gone. I'm gonna ask a different question.
Sure.
What was it about inventing that like interested you? Like
I think it's somewhat like puzzle solving. I don't really know what's so satisfying about solving a puzzle, but like having a problem in real life and then trying to come up with a creative solution to it through some kind of machine, I guess, or like some kind of idea, has always been an interesting thought experiment for me. It's probably what got me into like storytelling and that kind of stuff eventually.
Seems like a very deep thing for a kid to get into. Do you remember any, maybe obviously like maybe not like the first thing, but like what were some of the kinds of issues or problems that you were trying to solve with your like inventions as a child?
I remember trying to come up with different like modes of transportation, like cars that would run on wind power or like magnetic cars. Like I was really big into magnets for a while.
They are magic.
They are. And like, you're a little kid, you don't really actually understand how things work, but like I had ideas to like, when I learned that magnets could like contain things that have like a lot of heat, I was like, why don't towns that are near volcanoes have like these giant magnet walls to like hold back the lava? But you know,
Well,
in reality, that'd take so much power; it'd be ridiculous.
true. I mean, at least the core concept there is at least somewhat stable, right? Like, I don't
I don't
know
know. I'm
how
not a
much
scientist.
I don't know how much iron is like in like magma, but like isn't like I don't know. I don't know anything about volcanoes, but like I always thought that like lava and stuff was like liquefied rock and metal and stuff from like not maybe from the core itself, but like from pretty far down. I gotta
They,
assume there's some kind of like metal, like metal in lava, right?
yeah, probably. I mean, there's a lot of iron and a lot of different things in the ground, but like they use magnets to contain all kinds of different stuff. I think that they're. I I was reading something about. I didn't read it too in depth, so don't don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that they are using magnetic fields to contain the plasma that they're trying to use for uh, fission fission reactor. I think in Korea, I believe, something like that. So that's not like
Mhm.
metal as far as I know, but they're using magnetic fields to hold it. I don't really
I
know.
I want to say that I've also heard something similar to that. Um,
I remember seeing a documentary when I was like young, maybe like 10 years old, where they had like this crazy big machine that would was basically like a giant super magnet that would be like an area maybe the size of like a golf ball. They could magnetize that area, and they would do things like put a spider, like they had an example where they put a spider into it and the spider would just like hover in the middle of that
well,
sphere because it was magnetized by all that power going into it. The spider was fine, by the way.
that's good. Yeah, I was just watching something like last night or this morning while I was trying to sleep about um they were doing it was on I think it was on the Kyle Hill's YouTube channel that he was talking about they were doing some new research into animals and how they can like detect Earth's magnetic field.
Mm-hmm.
And I man, I can't quite remember what he was saying about it, but it's just funny that you bring up magnets and it was like literally like there was something about magnets that I was watching earlier today.
It's
It's
funny
kind
how
of
that
funny.
happens.
Yeah. Um well that's some pretty interesting stuff. So like getting back to like you're talking about like different modes of transportation and um that kind of stuff. I know like I noticed like sort of a theme was non-fossil fuel burning modes of transportation. Is that something that you feel strongly about? Are you like anti-fossil fuels? Were you anti-fossil fuels as a kid? Like where do you stand on that issue?
Yeah, I was like 8 years old out there protesting. No, no, I think just as a kid, I was just looking for different stuff. Like I just
Hmm.
wanted to try and think up new ways of doing things, and so those were my ideas. And then later on, found out not really as feasible as I thought.
Fair enough. Um but that brings me to like the kind of the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, which was so you've mentioned inventions, you've mentioned like designing new kinds of transportation. Um one of your defining characteristics in your art style, if not the defining characteristic of your art style, is uh mechanical parts.
Right.
For the audience who may not know Ethan, um, he streams on Twitch, and when most of the some of the time, I'll say some of the time because I know you're doing the D&D module art right now.
Mm-hmm.
But for many years you've been doing um the mecha doodles,
Mm-hmm.
where you allow people to, accrue channel points, and then we can buy parts from a list. And then, if we buy like a tube, you have to draw a tube. When you're like done with a current part, you immediately start drawing a tube. If we say wheels, I know how much you love drawing wheels. You have to just stick a wheel on there. One of my favorite things to do is try and buy an odd number of eyes and mouths to put on these things to make them as horrifying and grotesque as possible. I
Yeah,
don't know.
if you check out my Instagram, you can probably tell which ones Jeff had a part in.
I don't know why I like doing it, but I really like making them just horrifying to look at.
And it's fun. I
I
don't
think
blame
they
you.
look cool. Like, you always do a really good job with it. I really like that one where you put the mouth on the side of that tongue that was sticking out. I was like, "Oh god,
Yeah,
that's
it's one of my
horrifying,"
favorites.
but I love it. It's so cool. Like, they always look really cool. But there's just
Thank you.
something about like the idea that you have to put it in there if we buy it. And I'm just like, I'm gonna make him draw something that he probably never would draw on his own.
That's
And
why I
it
have it.
Yeah, and it's always just like, I think something like we're as humans, we really like symmetry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to do symmetry with an odd number of like items. So I always try to like manipulate it so there's like an odd number of things. But yeah, but I can remember um that you told me one time when I was asking about like your interest in mechanics and stuff, that you as a kid, I think you said you had like a tractor or something, and you were like super into like studying like the parts, and like that's like some of the inspiration on how you got into like drawing mechanical stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, like so like half of my childhood was spent around like on a farm in a farm situation, where we had like heavy machinery and stuff. And like I remember being a little kid and going and watching my uncle baling hay with his tractor, and like there's this big machine that would it it's called a baler. It
Mhm.
takes in the hay, it like scoops it up that's already been cut, and then it forms it into hay bales and then launches it into a trailer. And like
They
that
are
whole
fun.
process was super intriguing to me. And I specifically remember always looking into that baler and like trying to figure out how it worked, and like being uh, really enamored by the parts of all the tractors and uh, that baler, definitely. But also like my father has tractors and an excavator and a bulldozer that I use fairly often and help him fix when there's something wrong with it. So those parts kind of just got ingrained, I guess.
They just live in your brain.
Yeah.
Do you have like a strong interest in, for lack of a better term, like auto repair, like, machinery, and like repairing and working with that stuff?
I I do like it's a weird question. I have interest in the design of it, not necessarily in working on cars exactly.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that that has a lot more to do with just not really having a good space for it, or really the financial means to do something like that.
Right.
Um, but like I said, like I grew up with Legos and stuff, so and just like um, taking apart things and trying to put them back together. So like I like creating things and like figuring out how things work. Um, so in that way, yeah, I do have an interest in the automotive, an automotive interest, I guess you could say. But I'm not going to be one of those people that soups up their car or anything like that. Instead, I'll just draw it. It's faster,
More simple to just draw it. Hell yeah.
cheaper too.
It is, yeah. especially once you invest in digital. Uh,
Mm.
you don't even have to buy materials then. Uh, but so you mentioned your uncle, your dad, and like how you've helped your dad work on those things. Was that like a big part of growing up too, like helping him, like crank the wrench or whatever? I don't know. I'm not mechanical in any, as you can probably tell by me saying crank a wrench, because that's a thing that I think wrenches do. I don't know. Do you like, they have
Sure,
sockets, don't
I'll give
they?
it to
And
you.
they
Yeah,
make a
you can crank them.
they make a kind of noise. I don't know.
But so when I was like a little kid, obviously a lot of my helping was like, hand me that tool there, or hold this thing, like hold these bolts or whatever. Um, but and then as I got older, it kind of transitioned a little bit more. But um, well, I lost track of what I was going to say there. Cool, cool, cool.
All right. So those moments though, when you were working with your dad on things, are those like? Do you remember or do you look fondly back on those memories? Like, are those good memories of yours, or are those, like, I gotta assume they probably are, right?
Right now, they're just memories. That I don't really look back on them fondly or unfondly at the moment. It's kind of just
Okay.
part of my history.
How do you? Because I know for me, like, I can remember the one thing that I do like sort of have in this realm. Like, I played with Legos, but I was just like, I built the set and then that was it. Like, I never really thought much about Legos. But
Right.
the one thing that I can remember very distinctly, when I was in elementary school, and the Cub Scout recruiter, or whatever you want to call them, came by. I can remember in the pamphlet that they had, they talked about the Pinewood Derby and how you got to like make your own like little Pinewood Derby race car thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I was like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to like build like little race cars and send them down a track. I got started in the Cub Scouts and stuff, and my dad is the kind of person who's like, well, if you're gonna start something, son, you're gonna bet you better well finish it.
Mm-hmm.
And I, only through his constant and just unyielding nature of that mentality am I a Eagle Scout now. Like, if it had been up to me, I probably would have dropped out sometime after joining the Boy Scouts. Like, I had a lot of fun in Cub Scouts, but like once I joined the Boy Scouts, you don't do the Pinewood Derby anymore. There was a lot less things that I considered to be fun activities, and a lot more things that I was suffering through. So like, but that was like a big thing, right? Like, that my dad and I did together. And
Mm-hmm.
while I, looking back on it now in my 30s, like, I definitely appreciate that time, but it's those are like bittersweet memories. Like, I really liked spending the time I had with my dad, but like, it's also just like, I wish it was anything else. Like, I don't like camping, I'm not an outdoorsman, anything like that. And it was just like, there is that sort of like, I don't know if resentment is the right word, but there is just those negative feelings of like, God damn it, why did he like force me to do that? So I was
Yeah.
just wondering, like, I feel like you don't have any of those because you're very interested in like machinery and stuff. So I'd be very surprised to learn if you were like, yeah, and I just hated every moment of working on those tractors with my dad.
Yeah. It's that's why I was like, it's not like I didn't dislike it, but I wouldn't say that I liked it. I liked learning about like how things worked and how they went together and stuff like that. But for the most part, there like it was a lot of waiting around doing nothing, which as a kid is
Yeah,
brutal. But
it's true.
but I did like learning about how things go together and how you're supposed to put them together or take them apart. So that's why I'm like, they're just kind of memories. I wish that I had a better answer for you than that, but that's the one that I got.
Hey, no, we're here about honest conversations. I don't I don't need you to make something up that isn't there. I mean I even think like your sort of neutrality is interesting in it because there aren't many things in my life that I can recall that I feel neutral about, you know. And now maybe that's, you know, psychological like impairments, you know, like they say depression kind of like sucks away your ability to remember things, but like the things that stick out to me are the things that I either really really enjoyed or really really didn't enjoy. And I don't really have any sort of neutral emotions towards my past. I feel like a lot of the stuff that's fallen into that sort of neutral category I've just like just filed away and forgotten, you know.
Yeah, well, I think I'm almost the opposite of that, where it's like most things are neutral, but I remember them. And then like I have these spikes of like interest or disinterest, but most things are kind of like I can see both sides of it. So it
Hmm.
I'm not super enthralled by it, but I'm also uh not uninterested, I guess.
So do you have a if you see like I know I feel like I'm the kind of person who also sees or has the ability to like see both sides of things. I know I mentioned this when talking to Abstracto, but like one of the things that I think makes us human more than just being sentient or whatever, because there are some studies who think like, you know, dolphins may be sentient, right? And there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
animals that can understand their own reflection in like a mirror. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like people are like, oh, self-identification is, we're learning more and more that a lot of this shit isn't um just uniquely human. But I think so far, and maybe in 10 years or 20 years we'll we'll learn that nope, even this isn't unique to humans. But I feel like something that's unique to humans is the ability to embody an oxymoron, like to see both sides of something at the same time and be able to like, you know, have that cognitive dissonance. um so as someone like I've been obsessed with that idea for many years, and I think that helps me play devil's advocate, and I think that also makes people come to me sometimes for advice. Are you that person in your friend group? Like, do you have people coming to you? I know you have people coming to you for art advice in the Illustrati Discord as like one of the
Right.
main people there. Hell, I've come to you for like advice on art many times. But just like in general, do you find yourself playing the role of like the village elder and like being the wise old man that people come to be like, hey, I don't know what to do with my girlfriend or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's kind of a weird thing to answer because it's like, do I get it more than other people? I don't know. It's hard to say. But I definitely do have people that come to me for that specific reason for sure. Especially when like emotions are flaring.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually where people seek my advice because I'm pretty good at keeping that in check. But
Well, for
I
a
don't really have
man
any good stories or anything.
prone to neutrality, I think you could be a calming force for people if they're in a peaked moment of emotion.
Am I gonna have a bunch of people coming to me for weird advice now? That could be interesting.
um so right, dear Ethan, uh I've been having issues with my girlfriend, and then mail it to what, I don't know, what's your
Send it to,
mailing address?
send it to my Instagram. We'll get
Yeah,
you figured out.
yeah, everybody just you know, Ethan's the new Dear Abby.
Yeah,
Send him all of your life questions.
I may or may not answer all of them with the same response. You'll have to find out.
You'll have to compare notes with everybody else.
Yeah, I won't tell you who they are, so start asking around.
Yeah. um but yeah, I think I do have some more questions for you, more specific, pointed questions. But I think that's a good sort of backstory for you. Um, we're gonna go to a bit of a break here. Hear a couple of words from our sponsors, and then we will be back to talk about some more current endeavors of Ethan's uh, right after this break. Do you want to class up your gaming? Are you sick of card tables and cheap plastic sleeves for your character sheets? Do you like real wood and are convinced magnets are the only magic we have left in our current age of science? Then head over to legendcraft.ca to spruce up your tabletop gaming setup. They offer felt top gaming tables with add-ons like cup holders, tablet holders, dice trays, roll boxes, and more. Newly released in January 2021 is their Magna Tracker system. With versions for both health and spell tracking, these sleek and stylish tracking boards come with magnetized tracking pips that allow you to slide them back and forth along clean-cut channels, making tracking your health and spell slots easy to use and read, all without the constant erasing and writing on your character sheet. And did I mention that both the Magna Trackers and the tables are customizable and personalizable? That's right, your table and or Magna Tracker will be one of a kind when you order at Legendcraft. Legendcraft is partnering with me to offer you a 5% discount on your orders at legendcraft.ca. That's right, you can get a 5% discount when you enter the code F_ART at checkout. That's F_art. Go to legendcraft.ca. That's legendcraft.ca with discount code F_art for 5% off. Legendcraft.ca. Order today. And we're back from the break with Ethan Brewerton. Before the break, we talked about your youth and how you got interested in mechanical stuff for your art, how you do like mecha doodles. We're gonna talk a little bit about your cyber bend to your art here in a little bit, but I think a better place to start might be, and I don't know, maybe it's not. You know yourself better than I do. That's why we're doing this
Maybe.
podcast. But I think it'd be interesting to talk about how you got into comics specifically. Do you remember why comics over just painting things or sculpture or whatever?
I think I wanted to. I think that my love of like building things and like creating things eventually turned into wanting to build like narratives and like worlds to live in. I'm not exactly sure when that happened, but as soon as I realized that I wanted to get into like storytelling kind of a thing, but originally I don't think that I realized that I wanted to tell stories. I felt like I think I wanted to show the things as like illustrations basically. And then over time I realized that I wanted to tell more of a story about them instead of just like a single image or a single sculpture or a few images. So then I got into doing comics. And I also remember like when I was a kid, I didn't have access to a lot of comic books, but I did. I got introduced to Spawn through the action figures, and I remember like being completely blown away by Todd McFarlane's art and like the idea of this like Hell Soldier anti-hero thing.
I dig it. I dig it. So like that was going to be something I asked you, like how long have you been reading comics? You just said like you didn't have much access to them as a kid. I know I got into reading comics in a bad way, like when I was in college in film school. Was that sort of the same thing for you? Was it like a much later in life that you kind of got into like reading comics and stuff?
Yeah, I for me, comics have always been about like the visual storytelling. So I wouldn't say that I read a lot of them, but I do look at as many of them as I come across, basically. Um, or like if somebody recommends something, or you know, I'll go looking for them for reference or whatever. But yeah, that didn't happen until probably college, I think. I can't remember earlier than that getting into it. But yeah, especially because during college I used to pretty much live at a comic shop because it was between where I was living and where I was going to school, and I was playing a lot of
Gotcha.
tabletop games at the time. So yeah.
So you mentioned tabletop, you mentioned storytelling, through building stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, for I guess first I'll ask you this preliminary question. Do you prefer, when it comes to role playing, do you prefer being a player or do you prefer being the DM?
I don't think I have a preference in that regard. I think as long as I'm playing, like as long as it's happening, I'm usually having fun. If I don't have a lot of time, then obviously being a player is preferable. But if I
Mhm.
have the time to put into uh, like the prep, then I like being a GM too. So yeah.
What is the what do you think is the impetus then? Because I assume that it all comes back to like like the invention and the creation. But if you had to like dig real deep and get down into like, what do you think is the driving factor to wanting to build and create stuff in general?
That's a tough question to answer on the spot. Let me think for a second. I think, I mean, obviously there's like a little bit of escapism in there, but
Hmm.
also like exploring of ideas, um, and just having fun. Really, I think. Like I feel like there's a lot of things that get me excited about storytelling, and um, I know you're trying to like get me to distill it down, but I guess really it would just
Whatever
be
comes, man. Whatever you think.
the creativity involved, the puzzle solving. I feel like, yeah, I feel like the puzzle solving really is like the main part of what interests me about storytelling and pretty much everything that I do. Um, like how we were talking about the Mechadoodle thing. That's why I like collaborating with chat, is because I don't know what I'm going to draw,
Right.
and I love trying to figure out how the pieces fit together.
Well, I relate to that a lot. Like, I know I've mentioned to you before, like wanting to do like similar things. Like they have like a list of beholder parts in like the back of the book. And I've like tried streams like that. It didn't really seem like it took off in the way like people like your streams, but I definitely can understand like the puzzling thing. Like I'd like to do jigsaw puzzles as a kid. I even got into like some of those like 3D jigsaw puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is like for me one of the things that I love about comics, specifically the traditional like comic book format. Um, is something where like I really like the unique perspective that webtoons has with like their infinite scrolling. Like you can
Oh
do
yeah.
slightly different things with it, but overall it is not satisfying for me to do a webtoon in the same way that it is satisfying to play with panel dimensions and slot everything into a page that I need to be on a page. Like, you can't do widescreen panels in webtoons the same way that you can on a normal, page. Hell, you definitely can't do like a ultra wide 2-page spread kind of thing, you know? Like I feel like while there's a certain amount of like freedom in the Webtoons Infinite Scroll, the narrow strip to fit a phone screen is like, I don't know, I feel it's more restrictive and not in a like creative, like flourishing way, but just in a restrictive kind of way.
I think they
um
both have their own restrictions. It's just a matter of which restrictions you like.
yeah, and I think for me it's definitely like I prefer the like, oh, I could make a like a long tall panel here. I could put, you know, like two short fat panels uh next to it, and then I can separate the whole page by like a really you know, skinny but long wide panel, you know, like I
Yeah,
like
for
that
sure.
kind of like puzzle piecing things together. And like the idea of like, oh, but like, you know, because sometimes you're like, the most important beat for this is, you know, someone who is just, you know, standing and like kind of menacing or whatever. So you're like, oh, well, I just need to draw this one character standing, might as well put them in a tall skinny panel. But like then maybe there's like a guy who's, you know, swinging a sword baseball style, and you're like, well, I need a larger wider panel to get the full, you know, swing in there or whatever. So like I don't know, I like that kind of puzzling um together kind of thing. So yeah,
That
I
makes sense.
definitely, I can definitely get into the that puzzling aspect of like creation and stuff. But you talked about the escapism
Hmm.
thing. um and you know, at your own discretion to get as deep or not deep into this as you want, what are you trying to escape? Like I know I have my own like answers for those questions, but like is there something specific that you're dissatisfied with in this reality that you feel the need to find escapism in something?
I need my robot arms. No, I think that it's just like when I was a kid, I was really into this. This will just be one example, but I think it'll show what I mean at the larger scope. But when I was a kid, I was really into like animals and bugs and stuff like that. But then I kind of reached a point where I felt like I know this is ridiculous to say, but like I felt like I saw like most of the weird stuff and like I wanted more and I couldn't find it. And so I started exploring um, you know, mythical places, places that don't exist, and like making up my own stuff that I thought would be cool. Um, and so I think it's kind of like that with everything, where it's like, all right, I've seen like all the cars and stuff that are cool in reality, but what about if this other thing? What if this thing existed? You know, and like thinking about that stuff. Um, that kind of escapism. I don't know that I'm trying to escape anything specifically other than just uh, the world at large, I guess.
It's fair.
Existence.
Yeah, kind of just that existential torture of being alive. I get that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that brings us to like the my next thing is I know you're really into cyberpunk and like that sort of, you know, futuristic kind of vibe. And that's something where you know, to talk about like escapism and things, like for me personally, like I definitely like the style and the aesthetic of like, you know, like the game Cyberpunk 2077, right? Like I really like the look of that game.
Yeah.
But as far as the subject matter, um that is the escapism that I'm trying to avoid, right? Like I see our own world getting like sliding ever closer to something like that, where, you
Oh,
know, we're
100%.
heading towards a corporatocracy. And those are the things that like when I seek escapism, like I like to go the other way, you know, I like to go to like hard fantasy with like wizards and like, you know, weird magical powers where like the sort of society crushing the little guy isn't really a a concern. But if it's interesting to know, like, your version of escapism is you're not trying to escape that. Is Do you think you I mean, I know you're like machinery and stuff like that, so cyberpunk's probably like just a no duh kind of thing, but like, do you have an opinion on the dystopian nightmare that is cyberpunk? Not just the game, but just like the
The
genre in
genre.
general.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I'm definitely into it for the aesthetic, but um, I actually kind of view it a little bit differently than you. While I see, like, it's clearly all the stories are dystopian and horrific, and yes, I think everybody who's into cyberpunk sees that we are hurtling towards that kind of future, and it's terrifying. But the like playing games that are cyberpunk or creating stories that are cyberpunk, it's almost like a way to feel like you have some kind of control over it, like
Hmm.
a way to fight back, even though you're not actually doing it, because doing it in real life is that feels super futile to a lot of people. Whereas in a story, you can do things like you can. I mean, Fight Club wasn't a
Last week,
cyberpunk movie, but that's the kind of story that would be in a cyberpunk thing that
right?
everybody can
Yeah.
relate to.
Last week I would have agreed with you, but everything that's happened in the last couple of days with the subreddit Wall Street Bets and them taking down those hedge funds, I kind of like, well, I mean, the little guy's kind of fighting back and like kind
See,
of winning right now.
I'm not convinced
Kind
that's the
of.
little guy. I'm not convinced it's the little guy.
I mean, there are like a lot of people buying. Like, if it wasn't for me forgetting my password to my bank account, like my online account, I would have been buying AMC stock on Tuesday. Like,
Right?
before they like halted the buying. Like, I was trying to get in on the train. I do think like the people driving it are like out of work day traders and stuff. And I know, like, getting like the research that I've done into it and like the news stories I've heard, it definitely started out as like, oh, okay, so these guys are going to put a hold on this particular stock. Well, fuck it, like, let's band together and make some money.
Yeah, for
But it
sure.
has turned into something more than just wanting to make money at this point. Like, it went from just a like, a couple of day traders on Reddit being like, hey, we have the power to manipulate this and we're out of a job, so why the fuck not?
Mm-hmm.
From now, what I understand is like, they're like, oh shit, no, like, we can like destroy hedge funds, like, and that has become like their goal now, is like to actually like, it is from what I've heard on some news sources, is like, it is the largest transfer of wealth potentially, because you actually have to sell out in order to get your money out of it. But like, they're saying this could be the largest transfer of wealth from the rich to the non-rich, like,
Yeah,
in
it definitely gives
modern
me.
history.
I mean, it gives me hope. I won't lie, that there's something to be done, and I hope. But it's like too big of a thing to actually get your mind around, I think, without actually
Oh yeah.
being in it. So it's hard for me to say one way or the other. But like in if I were to be writing this cyberpunk narrative, this would be the turning point of the story, to be like, all right, we're going back to not having corporate overlords. But we'll see.
Well, hey, I mean, we can only hope, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's
Well, actually, no, you can create a cyberpunk story.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's true. But yeah, getting back to like the art and the cyberpunk of it all. I definitely like, I can understand what you're talking about. Like, you create a cyberpunk story and to like kind of work through the frustrations and stuff. It's something in my own work. Like, I'm kind of writing a slice of life story with the whole Ozrin thing, and like
Mm-hmm.
it is like going to be like Fonkin's like life story and all that stuff. Um, and I the first literally the first story arc is it starts with their landlord like pounding on their door being like, you haven't given me rent, and then the whole reason they get back into like questing and stuff, and going out and like fighting goblins or whatever, is like because they need to pay rent, which is funny because that exact thing is what I use as an example for why I don't like Marvel and prefer DC when I read, Cape comics. Like,
What's
I
that?
find it kind of annoying that I'm always like, if I'm reading Spider-Man, it's always like, well, how are we going to pay rent, Aunt May? Like, and you got to go out there, and like I feel like just as a whole, like Marvel likes to look at that side of those characters a lot more than DC does.
Yeah.
And I guess it comes back to the escapism thing where like I'm looking to avoid real life in my entertainment and my media,
Mm-hmm.
versus, but like what you're talking about writing a cyberpunk, if I was more knowledgeable about the genre, like I'd probably much more enjoy writing a cyberpunk than I would like reading or consuming cyberpunk.
Right. That makes sense.
It is a strange sort of catharsis.
I like the idea of like Bruce being like, "But Alfred, how are we gonna pay the bills?"
Yeah, that one would be pretty funny. Oh no, Wayne Tech's getting audited again.
But Lois, how am I gonna pay my apartment for my apartment? Bruce, or oh my God, Clark, you don't need to live anywhere. You don't need to do anything.
You have an ice castle in the
Yeah.
North Pole, and you can fly from the North Pole to the South Pole in like 4 seconds. Like, what are you talking? Like, you can hear everything on the planet all at the same time. Like, what? You don't need money. I'm pretty sure, like, I don't know enough about Superman to like know if this is true, but like, does he even need to eat food?
I don't know. I was curious about the same thing. I don't really follow it either.
Like, I know he gets his like, I'm pretty sure he's a plant.
Yeah, confirmed. He's a plant.
Oh my god. Wouldn't that be funny? I know like the game theory group, like game theory, film theory, and now food theory on YouTube. I know do they don't have comic theory, but I would love to see, is Clark Kent a plant? As a theory. Because he gets his power from solar radiation. I mean, he's kind of photosynthetic, right? Like,
Does he eat?
that would just be
Yeah,
hilarious to see
Superman is a
someone.
carnivorous plant.
Yeah, oh my god, that'd be hilarious to like have someone make a theory about that and try and prove that Clark Kent is more like a plant than an actual like mammal or something.
I can see that
Oh,
argument for sure.
that'd be hilarious. But yeah, no, I definitely like that idea of getting into cyberpunk and viewing it more as a like cathartic kind of like, let's work through these emotions and stuff. But I guess on the other hand, we do have that sort of fantasy aspect into it. I know you're doing a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons character add-on package right now.
Mm-hmm.
What got you not so I guess first question, have you done anything like that before? Have you like done sort of like game design stuff previous to this project?
Yeah, I mean, beyond just my own like modifying the rules in my own campaigns, like every GM does. I created this. It's called the Living Community. It's like a D&D MMORPG. I made it through Reddit and Discord. It's called East_Marches on Reddit, and it's basically it's a West Marches style campaign. So rotating cast for every session, and you have like a central location, and you venture out into the world and come back. Kind of similar to how I'm running the playtest, which I just realized that our listeners have no idea what I'm talking about. But
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah, we ended up having like over 100 players at one point when I was there, and I was super into making rules to make a campaign for over 100 people work with D&D 5e, but I was kind of too into it, and it was taking up so much of my time that I had to step away because I seriously could not control myself. Like I just kept going back and like working on it for like 40 plus hours a week, even though I knew that I had to be paying bills by drawing. But designing all those rules and stuff was super fun, and the community's still around today. Like they're still going. So then I was like, why not? Why couldn't I make a module or like a supplement for 5e? Like I have all this experience and I know all these people that have a bunch of experience. So that's why I'm doing it. Well, one of the reasons that like pushed me to do it, I guess.
So speaking of the module, for our listeners, you want to give like just a kind of a rundown of what the add-on or supplement or module, whatever technical term is correct, like what it's all about?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I have made a story. I made a webtoon comic called Lineage.exe, which is basically think primal, like tribal people. Think Horizon Zero Dawn, so primitive people that are interacting with high technology. So like tribal people with cyber arms, cyber legs, cyber eyes, that kind of stuff. And after I did that and we kind of like built out this world, I had people asking me if I was going to run a D&D campaign set in that, or if I could, or if I'd be willing to like help somebody run it. And it kind of like got put on the back burner where I was like, yeah, I do want to do that, but I don't really have the time to invest in trying to figure out how that would even work, like what rule system or how to integrate it or whatever. And over that time, I kind of came up with a bunch of ideas for how to integrate it into D&D 5e because that's the most popular thing, the easiest thing to get people to play. And also it's like a fairly simple system. So the complexities of cyberware will hopefully be kind of smoothed out. And so right now, it is a system for integrating cyberware similar to magic items into your D&D 5e campaign so that you can tell a story like what I have in Lineage.exe. So it's basically
having played it,
mm-hmm.
I can say it is very fun.
Thank you.
You should definitely use cyber whips to swing through the jungle, because that's very fun. And avoid any lone goblin ronin that you might run into. Just because they're small doesn't mean that they can't cut you in half.
The at the beginning, I'm not planning on putting any like monsters or anything like that into it, but I'll probably put some stretch goals in there for the Kickstarter to integrate some of the world stuff into the module.
All I ask is that even if you don't include monsters, you include that goddamn goblin samurai.
No promises, but maybe.
I'm not salty, but it was one goddamn goblin. How was I not gonna just be like, it's just a goblin? We could kill a goblin.
It's a goblin with cyber limbs and glowing eyes, and it's by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you got like lost or something. I don't know. He's small. He knows how to hide well.
He wasn't lost. You were lost.
I
Wrong side of
well,
the tracks, buddy.
you know, you live and learn, I suppose. Except I died by getting cut in half by a freaking samurai goblin.
But then you survived to die again.
Uh yeah, yeah, but then we did that 3-part story on my channel and on my Twitch channel, and I was just like, you know what? I have enough points to put cyber legs on a guy. Let's resurrect that old character, only to die again.
Good
Uh,
times. But at least everyone went with you.
cyber jungles, guys, they're dangerous. I tell you, they're dangerous.
Trying to
Don't.
test the limits of my playtest.
Yeah, that I mean, yeah, it is a playtest, so I am throwing caution to the wind and just maybe being more reckless than I would be in a normal game, but it's all in service of testing things out, right?
Yeah, it's fun.
Um, I don't think I've mentioned it on the podcast, but I am also someone who I am very I'm not chaotic in the sense of like, oh, I'm just gonna do a thing randomly, but I am chaotic in that I love to see the downfall of my characters. I do enjoy um seeing my characters get destroyed by stuff.
It's true. I've seen it.
Um but yeah, yes. For those listeners who don't know, I am renowned at rolling terribly. And I think I was talking with Turkey about this. If that episode is out and you've listened to that episode, I talked about a little bit. I touched on how I got my start in role playing as the DM. I like never played or anything, and part of learning how to do that was talk like researching articles and stuff about D&D, because this was before there was live videos of D&D on the internet. This was pre Critical Role. Hell, it was before Acquisitions Incorporated even started filming their PAX things. It was just audio podcasts at that point, back in like 2008. So the most things that I found was like how Gygax ran his things, and Gygax murdered the fuck out of his like early D&D. Brutal, very brutal. So not only like it's that mindset, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna walk into a dungeon and the floor is gonna fall out below me, even if I tap with my 10-foot pole searching for trapdoors, and then I'm just gonna fall into like an oiled covered pit with acid at the bottom and just die. Like those are my expectations. And then pairing that with just like a decade of not being able to roll well when it really, really matters. I've just been like, yeah, no, I'm not going to get attached to any character. And I like actively root for them to die. It's probably not healthy,
Gotta roll with the
but
punches sometimes.
you know, it's like, trying to live our best lives in D&D, right?
Gotta
Why?
live our best fake lives.
Yeah. Why give into depression in real life when I can give into depression multiple times in D&D?
In fake life. Yes.
Just coming back to that escapism thing.
Definitely.
um so we talking about like your you did the lineage.exe story.
Mm-hmm.
What you said like you had someone wrote that and you were the artist, or you co-wrote that with somebody?
Yeah, I co-wrote it with my friend Michael Egolf. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I've never pronounced it out loud, I don't think. But I've been friends with him for years.
Who was which half of that partnership was the cyber element of that whole thing?
I think you know the answer to that.
Fair enough. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's a cyberhead too. Like I,
Now he's big into fantasy stuff, like hero's journey kind of thing, and so I knew that he was the person that I wanted to work with on that project.
so it's a that unique blend is just the product of that partnership. Then
Yeah.
that's cool. Um, I have another question about the like the whole cyber thing, and specifically with the it's one thing to draw a comic, right? And like, oh yeah, that guy's got a cyber arm, that dude's got like a cyber face or whatever. Um, but
Cyberface.
like an eye here, a jaw there.
Yeah.
Um, but once you started doing the module building itself, how difficult has it been coming up with the actual like functionality of the different cyber attachments?
So I think at the beginning it was a little rough because I didn't know what direction to go with them and like what would be appropriate for 5e. But once I kind of got like a foundation for things like cyber limbs and like the different like types of cyber limbs you can get, I think that's where uh, things got a lot easier until it got to the point where I spent all my inspiration, right? And like it's like, all right, I'm tapped out now, but I know that I need more stuff. Like I know that I have more stuff. I know that I want to do more stuff. I just don't know what it is yet. I'm really like pushing beyond that's where it kind of got difficult. But I've played a lot of Shadowrun, and I've looked at a lot of other cyber punk systems and things like that. And so I had a lot of inspiration going into it. And then Cyberpunk 2077, you can edit that, right? You're not going to.
I'm not now.
Perfect. Came out like right around that same time, which probably fueled me to want to make this module even more. But it also gave me a bunch of ideas for just like types of cyberware that people might want. But I think that was the hardest thing, is to like come up with cyberware that would be interesting and give people enough choices that they actually feel like they have a choice.
Right. I mean, I definitely think there's like a wide breadth of options, and there's like stuff in there that I wouldn't have thought about. Even with like the progression of like various items, like one that I'm intimately familiar with because I played a guy with like a cyber whip arm.
Mm-hmm.
You go from like just a cyber whip to then like a prehensile cyber whip, and then like where I could like hold like things in like the weird tentacle arm. And then what's the one above that? There's like another,
The grapple whip, something like that.
yeah, yeah. So there's like all these like progressions on top of it all. And that's something where like something that I've like run into in my comic, where like Fonkin is an artificer, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He's this magical inventor guy, and it's something where like when I was playing World of Warcraft, I was like, oh man, this is really fun. Like I loved the engineering profession and like building like these like little robot toys, or attaching rockets to my boots and like being able to sprint real fast. And but like now that I'm doing this comic, and like part of it is that sort of classic golden age Batman kind of thing of like, the villain this week needs me to invent this particular bat gadget. It's like I'm always just like, what? Like my brain is just like, I don't know what kind of gadget to make. um
Yeah, I think it comes back to like my childhood of like wanting to be an inventor, right?
yeah.
Like I have so much experience with just trying to come up with weird things and like how I would want something to exist, like what I would want to exist if said parameters were true. If I could get cyberware from these machine gods, what would I want? And I just put all that in there.
I would want to put my brain in a jar.
Yeah. I just couldn't think of good mechanics or something like that, so didn't go in.
Well, I mean, at that point, I just choose to be a warforged.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it's already in there. It's already in the D&D rules, so
Yeah.
I didn't need to worry about
No.
it.
When you, it's just like when you say, if I could actually do this in real life, I'm just, me personally, very dissatisfied with my physical body. Can I just not? Can I just not? Can I like just give me an artificial body, please? Like,
Yeah.
struggling with weight your whole life. I have a lazy eye. Both of my eyes are bad. I need to wear glasses. Like, that's always the thing that like I talk about is like if you could just give me like 4K ultra high def zoom night vision heat vision all that kind of stuff, yeah, just rip my eyeballs out and give me robot eyes.
That'd be pretty sweet.
That would be the first thing. But like ultimately just fuck losing weight. Just take my brain out my head. Let's put it in a body that's like not fat. Thank you. Okay, moving
Me in
on.
a metal body.
Yeah, I was just like, cool. I mean, cost benefit analysis, I'd probably be okay with not being able to ever taste food again.
Yeah, that'd be a tough sell.
Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway.
Maybe.
But is this maybe something I just need to hire you as a consultant for Osrin Tales stuff? Because like a lot of the shit that I've done like in the past was just jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Like so I played Fonkin as a character in a D&D campaign that lasted about 2 years in real life.
Wow.
And he was inventing various things throughout that, but it was all just stupid shit that I can't use like in the comic, right? Like in the one um in the one thing, like the first time he invented something, I had used prestidigitation to like put some like uh a kind of like a summoned like a substance on the floor. We were in a kitchen and I forget what this like cook was doing, but I was trying to like prevent them from leaving the room,
Mm-hmm.
and I messed up. I meant to say sticky, like I wanted like to stick their shoe to the ground and like make them step out of their shoe, so they had to like stop like and wait a minute and like collect their shoe. But I said slippery.
Mm-hmm.
And the DM like did a roll and he like crit failed, and the guy like fell down and like shattered his elbow and like broke his arm.
Oh God.
And it's like medieval times or whatever. And so I was like, can I roll like an intelligence check or like a medicine check or something? Because like I was like, that's not what I meant to do. I feel really bad. And and I like got really like high on the roll or something.
Mm-hmm.
And like his first invention was inventing the splint. like
Nice.
like he invented the splint. And like
It's
later
important.
on in the campaign I invented the hoop and stick.
Then
Like pushing a hoop down the road with a stick.
later I invented the wheel.
Well, no, not yeah. And then like another thing that he quote unquote invented was like the paddle ball, like the ball and the paddle like on the string, you like hit
Mm-hmm.
the that paddle ball game. All things that I can't put into the comic. Like I can't put that shit in the comic. Like it doesn't make any sense. The
You can
one
make it make
thing
sense.
is there's an ad in the first issue, and I got some feedback of people like, I don't like that like thing. I was trying to use it as like an act break, like and all this stuff, and people were like, it's too intrusive, like it's immersion breaking or whatever. And so I didn't do it for issues 2 and 3, but I am adding some ads in between issues 2 and 3 and the short story for the when I collect it all into a graphic novel.
Right.
Hopefully, sometime this year, I still have to have to make those ads. And again, it comes back to the whole like I can't like I'm having difficulty coming up with like inventions. The one thing from that game that I did put in the comic book was the Cinnapal cinnamon mints uh tagline. They're explosively delicious.
Oh
And
boy.
the ad is just a kid smiling with like 4 teeth left and like blood coming out of his mouth, because the whole thing is that they explode in your mouth. It's like violent pop rocks.
Boy.
And then the next ad I did was, it was like new from Fonkin's workshop or whatever. It's like, you've tried our Cinnapal mints, try our new dentures. And it's just a pair of dentures. Like, yeah, we shattered your teeth, but we've got new ones for you.
Nice.
Kind of
At
stuff.
least they
But
got you
like,
covered.
yeah. But like that's where it basically ends. Like he invented basically, like Birdie Bot's every flavored beans. Like he invented that, but instead of just, oh yeah, they're jelly beans that taste like everything, they would like have like a magical property. So like the marshmallow one turns you into like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Like a Willy
The
Wonka everlasting gumball or whatever.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Or that gum that Violet Beauregard eats and
Yeah.
like turns into a blueberry. Um, yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, or like the booger flavored jelly bean, like just makes you just leak phlegm out of every hole in your body,
Makes you a
even the ones
booger.
that aren't supposed to produce mucus.
Ew.
Yeah, no, it's bad. But like his whole thing was in the campaign was like he's supposed to be like a toy maker and prank shop owner.
I mean, he's a gnome, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. My any of my players that have played with me for long enough to run into an evil NPC that's a gnome, they don't like to deal with those things. I try to play them very obnoxiously, and I feel like that's honestly, I feel like that's my truest self is when I'm playing an obnoxious, tricksy gnome character in D&D.
You are you're basically like what, fucking twisted Santa Claus. You're like just gonna invent things to fuck with people.
I guess so. Yeah, sure. I like that. That's why it's only the half white beard. The other half is evil.
But yeah, maybe I'll have to hire you as a consultant to fucking help me write that kind of stuff.
It sounds like fun.
But yeah, we talked about escapism, we talked about role playing, getting into that kind of stuff. Um Before we end here, is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
So I don't know if it was in this version or if it was the last version, but I talked a little bit about like when I was a kid, I viewed artists as like something separate. Like you had to be born with a certain amount of talent to be an artist.
Right, I think that was the first attempt at it.
Well, I wanted to swing back around to that because there's a very important thing that I always like to bring up whenever I talk about talent, which is believing that it exists hinders growth. And I feel like everybody should know that like that barrier doesn't exist.
Agreed. I think it's a
And
very important message. Yes.
and by like if you view it as, oh, I'm not talented enough, then you're going to lock yourself out of a lot of things that you could have been doing. So stop it.
Yes. Stop it. Anybody out there listening who wants to be an artist or anything for that matter,
Yeah.
you can. It's just, it's gonna require effort.
It takes a lot of time and effort. And if you're out there and you are always being told that you are talented, don't let that go to your head. That can be
Yeah,
just as damaging as not believing that you have any talent.
that
Still
that,
got to work
that
hard.
is true. They say, like a lot of naturally gifted or intelligent people early in life end up kind of tanking later in life because you don't learn those skills of stick to itiveness and tenacity to like keep learning and working to improve yourself.
Yeah.
um, if you don't learn that young and then once you do hit that wall you're just like, this is hard, I'm just not, well, I guess I'm just not good at it, and then you don't do it. But when it comes to art specifically, the kind of analogy I always like to say is, um, if you can write, if you know how to like physically create the shapes that make up letters, you can learn to draw.
Yeah.
Like that's all there is to it.
Hell, even if you
All
can't,
man, yeah, true, probably, yeah. To be
it might
fair,
it might not look how you imagined it was going to look, but you can still make something pretty cool, I bet.
yeah. The logic I always give people when they say, "Oh man, I can't draw," and I ask them like, "Well, you know how to write, don't you?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, writing is just identifying the shape of a letter and then kind of accurately representing that shape on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
All drawing is identifying the shapes of the things that you want to draw and then recreating those shapes on a piece of paper." And
It's like
just like when you were in school and you had that, two lined with a dotted line in the middle paper, and you sat there and you wrote the letter A 5,000 times and the letter B 5,000, just that practice and repetition to do it. That's all it takes to be an artist.
yeah, definitely. That's a great parallel. I like that. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah,
Claim it as my own.
hell yeah. Don't even credit me. um, I think
Wasn't
I heard it
planning
from
on it.
I think I heard it from somebody else anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But something I did mention in the excuse me, something I did mention in the Scrub recording, which I think is a good end cap to this because it definitely applies to what we were just talking about, is something that a professor of mine said in school. One of the biggest things that one of my, I think, most important takeaways, piece of advice from one of my professors was that art isn't fun. Art is work, right? It is work that can be satisfying. It can be gratifying, right? You can find a sense of pride in it. And you can may even look back on doing it saying, like, yeah, that was fun in a certain sense, right? But when you're actually there doing the work, it can be work. I know for me, like when I do a comic, I tend to run out of that excitement motivation about 30% of the way in, and that I
Mm-hmm.
don't get excited again until about 80% of the way through. That middle 50% is a slog. Like there are days when Vance McCoy's words ringing in my head, it's a job, you got to get out of bed and do it anyway. Because there hasn't been a single comic that I've done that I don't look back on and I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I did that. I may not be happy with the work that I did because I've gotten better, right, since
Mm-hmm.
doing it, but like it are always something that I'm like, yeah, I did it. So if anybody out there is listening and you want to be an artist and you think to yourself, I'm not talented enough to do it, just know that's a bunch of bullshit. Art is work, and if you want to learn how to draw, you're going to have to put in the work.
And you can.
And you can. And Ethan and I are here to help. I'm going to volunteer you.
Oh, thanks.
Call 1-800 I want to learn how to draw really, really good, like the best there ever was. Hashtag Ethan Brewerton, and then he'll pick up the phone, and you
It's
can,
true. It's true. I
yeah,
will.
Yeah.
I have like a bat phone.
Yep. You have to plug in all that exact phrase. 1-800. I want to learn how to draw really good. The best there ever was. Hashtag Ethan Brewerton. It's like a 40-digit phone number. And he'll
Very
pick up
complicated.
and teach you how to draw.
And don't let the other person on the other end fool you into thinking that you didn't call me, because you did. You just talk to them more. You have to convince them.
Yeah. He's got a really militant secretary that screens his phone calls.
It's true.
But yeah, thanks for being on the podcast, Ethan. Let everybody know where they can find you around the internet.
Well, thanks for having me. You can find me at Ethan S Brewerton everywhere other than like TikTok. So if you use Instagram,
TikTok,
I don't know. I think it's like a little sugar candy thing. But yeah, if you use Instagram, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever.
Twitch.tv/Ethan S Brewerton.
That too. YouTube.
You can find him, a direct line to him in the Illustrati Discord server.
Yes.
As well.
And I will help you there. You don't even need to use that 40-digit thing.
Yeah. You can just post your work in progress in the art critiques channel, and we'll give you feedback there.
Yeah. Or I actually just added a Patreon tier for a mentorship.
Ooh. Patreon.com/Ethan S Brewerton.
There you go.
Hell yeah. Do you have like a link tree or a streamer thing that like people can like find all those links in one place?
I do indeed.
Which one is it?
Linktree.
All right, so linktr.ee/Ethan S Brewerton. You can find all those links. Is the Illustrati Discord on there?
I'll put it on there if it's not. I think it is, but it's been a while.
Hell yeah. Well, if you're listening to this on YouTube, I'll make sure to have all those links in the description of this video. If you're listening to this on Spotify or any of the other audio podcast, go to Ethan's Linktree. Click on all those links, follow him on all those places. And again, if you're interested in learning how to draw, he's a wonderful teacher, definitely a good mentor. He's helped me figure out a lot of the basic rules on comic book paneling and like how to do page layouts and stuff. Again, great guy, wonderful conversation. Thank you for being here, Ethan.
Thank you for having me, and believe all of Jeff's lies.
Yes, believe them all. Believe every single one. Do it. Yeah, have a good week, everybody.